WNST. The Ravens get eliminated, even though I have my purple rope lights here, my Festivus lights that I never got to ring the leg lamp or anything like that last week. So I start to dive into what happens next. And we're going to Atlanta in a couple of weeks. We're going to be doing Super Bowl coverage. Of course, all of it brought to you by our friends at Strategic Factory and Royal Farms, as well as our friends at Curio Wellness. We'll be telling you more about all of our sponsors around here during Super Bowl week. But between now and then, not only Terps games, not only Blast games and things happening out there, but Hall of Fame voting with a legitimate Oriole angle here and Mike Mussina. And I talked to Mark Mussina a couple months ago. I'm going to start diving in with all my baseball buddies. This guy is a beer-drinking enthusiast who now lives in Asheville, North Carolina after a long, illustrious career as a baseball editor at Sporting News. He does baseball podcasts. He does Oriole podcasts. He's an Oriole lifer fan. And you can find him out at J. McGuire MLB with the silver beard that I'm showing, which is all of the years and wisdom that have gone since October of 1983. Justin McGuire, we welcome you. It's 2019. It's one more year. We're not going to win a World Series. So we try to move on to other debates. And I know how fired up you were about Harold Baines about 6 weeks ago. I'm going to start that conversation all over again as these ballots come in. And look, man, I'm on record with the Hall of Fame where it just doesn't mean much to me anymore. It's more like who wins the Oscars. It's just some weird popularity vote when they're letting Harold Baines in, man.
It was a very, very strange decision. As you know, I think, if you're on social media the day that was announced, it was just stunned, silence from a lot of people. It was like, Harold Baines, really? I think nobody thought that was a possibility.
Including Harold Baines, by the way.
Right, exactly. And I think, if you look, I don't want to get in too much into the politics of it, but it's pretty clear that he got in because he had a lot of friends and supporters on this small committee, this 16-member committee, which it's unfortunate because whatever you want to say about the writers and any mistakes they make in terms of the Hall of Fame voting, there's usually 400, 500 some voters, and so the really odd decisions do tend to get washed out. They kind of, there's enough people voting that things like this generally don't happen with the writers. So I really do blame it on this small committee system, which is not really geared towards. It's a recipe for quirky decisions like this. I'll put it that way.
Well, the Rizzuto thing was probably the last time there was a real scuttle. And look, Jay, I'll give you this, right? The name on the back of my jersey says Aparicio, right? I go out to Chicago and see the statue out in center field and see, my last name on the facade at whatever they're calling Comiskey Park these days, down at the end of the L, right? And Louis would not get in under the modern circumstances of he set the table, he stole some bases, he was a nifty fielder. They would look at his offensive numbers and just say he's not getting in the Hall of Fame. I don't know whether Ozzie Smith, I don't know. But the modern era is so cloudy with the drugs and the PEDs and the politics. Which probably brings me to Mussina versus Schilling. And so let me just give full disclosure. I drank beer with Mike Mussina on more occasions than I have hands or fingers or toes to count. So I knew Mike well here. We were the same age. He was sort of my Bobby Jean from my Springsteen. We like the same music. We like the same bands. We like, you know what I mean? We like the same stuff. You know what I mean? Like, we went to Van Halen concerts and Def Leppard concerts, and his brother and I are still lifelong friends, and he comes on the show. So, I'm biased to some degree, but I wouldn't be biased if they gave me the form and said, you're a voter. And, of course, Angelo's throwing me out 12 years ago, precludes me from being a voter, and I don't know whether I'd want to be a voter. The whole thing makes me itch when they, box out Marvin Miller and rewrite the history and Pete Rose. And, I love the Hall of Fame. I like, Jeff. I like the people up there. I don't know what it stands for, and I don't know. But anyway, Curt Schilling would be the other part of this because, to me, Yeah, I would say they're 1 and 1A. I mean, I would put them both in the Hall of Fame. I DJ'd Kurt Schilling's wedding, okay? Kurt Schilling married my best friend growing up. Kurt Schilling's wife was like a sister to me from the time I was 4 years old. Kurt Schilling's wife and I played hooky, and it cost me a D in journalism senior year because we stopped at Burger King and got too many croissant sandwiches on Merritt Boulevard. So, you know what I mean? Like, I have ties. I hid out in Kurt's house during the World Series in 1993. You know what I mean? So, like, I have ties to both of them, but they're both Hall of Famers, and Schilling's never going to get in because he's out of his mind. And right. I guess Mussina's going to get in now when he hasn't thrown a baseball in anger in 5 years. And Phil Jackman was one of my dear friends when he was voting and a big part of this, and chasing Weaver around in the 70s at the Evening Sun. And there was always this weird code with him and these angry old white guys like Conlon where they would not vote anybody in the first year. And I'm like, that's such a weird policy that you're going to say you're not a Hall of Famer this year, but I'm going to vote for you next year. Like, right. You either are or you aren't to me. And, that's the Blylevens and how long it took Sutton and other guys to get in. When I always would have voted for them, but Schilling's never getting in now, right? Like on politics, and Mussina's going to get in. I think. I hope.
I don't know that I agree with you on that because he is up to. Looking at the latest tracking that they do. Mr. Tibbs, not Mr. Tibbs, Ryan Thibodeau does on Twitter, and I think Schilling is up to something like 70-some% in the public ballot so far. He's not going to get in this year, but I think there's a very realistic chance he gets in the next 2 years, honestly. I mean, he's been trending upward the last few years. He had 1 year where 1 or 2 years where he trended downward when he was sort of at his height of social media madness. But
I hope he gets in because he deserves to be in. But, the hanging journalist by tree stuff, it hasn't sat well with me. It hasn't sat well with his family and me. And, I am sensitive to such issues, having seen friends brazenly murdered in Annapolis, right? So, I take umbrage to all of that. And, I shall and will and must be speaking out on such things. And I'm not to say that if I had a ballot, I would keep Schilling off because of anything he said or done or the bloody sock or anything other than I think he's a Hall of Fame pitcher of this era. I don't think he used steroids. I mean, the Mussina thing, and, I don't think he used steroids now becomes like the, we wet our finger and see which way the wind's blowing when they're putting Pudge Rodriguez and Piazza and giving – I don't know where the rules are, and I don't think anybody does. And I'm wondering at what point Bonds and McGuire and Sosa and these guys, and obviously on hits and various statistical numbers, McGuire probably isn't a Hall of Famer, but Sosa probably is. And Lord knows Rafael Palmeiro, who once chased me with a bat at Camden Yards, that if I had a ballot on him, I probably wouldn't vote for him because I think he's sort of tainted by the drugs. But
yeah, I think what you've described here in these last couple of minutes is a very, very complicated situation in terms of Hall of Fame voting these days. So, you've got the PEDs, you've got the, Kurt Schilling's, the things that he's done off the field since he retired. You've got sabermetrics changing people's views on certain accomplishments and certain things that people did. And then you've got these veterans committees making wacky decisions like Harold Baines that kind of, when Harold Baines gets in, if you put everybody as good as Harold Baines in the Hall of Fame, we're suddenly going to have hundreds more guys getting in, and literally the writers almost have to ignore it. They almost have to pretend that it didn't happen, or else they're going to be voting everybody in. So it's a very complex, complicated situation, and I think it has turned off a lot of fans because it is so messy. There's nothing clean or easy about Baseball Hall of Fame voting, and that's a shame because this should be something where fans are having fun with it, where fans are enjoying seeing great players honored, and it's become everything else but that these days.
Justin McGuire is our guest, and this is where I want to bring you into this and let you sort of run wild and run. You do your podcast. This is a fascinating topic, right? So I started in radio in December of 1991. So probably 3 weeks into my career with Kenny Albert, we were having Hall of Fame debates then. and they were, really fun. I mean, it was a big part of what I did in December and January before we got a football team, and our football team stunk the first couple of years. So, this went on the first decade. Then the steroid thing happens, and then we're in this long, dark era here of baseball being sort of irrelevant. There's only Cal, and Cal got into the Hall of Fame 12 years ago. That's how long ago now it was that my son and I all jumped in the limo. We drove all night through Pennsylvania, and we handed out Baltimore Loves Cal and Free the Birds signs. And, it just feels like yesterday, but there's nothing else over the horizon other than Mussina kind of sort of around here, other than, your relative Jim Thomeys and guys that spent 3 minutes at the end of the bench with the Orioles or whatever. And I guess one day Machado will come up and, time remains to be seen whether Johnny Hustle is a Hall of Famer or not, and he'll be a Hall of Famer with money. If not, he can buy his way. He can buy a wing, make an honorarium in 2042
Absolutely,
or whatever. But I would say this for Mussina. There's never been any doubt for me, right? So I'll let you soapbox this as to who is in or not, and we could sit here and beat Harold Baines up or maybe then make the candidacy for Edgar Martinez. To me, there's never been a debate about Mussina as to whether you would put him in the Hall of Fame or not. The same thing with Schilling. The minute their careers ended, I looked at them. I watched them pitch every fifth day. I saw what they represented. Schilling was fortunate enough to, be a part of a couple of special things, and Mussina was, part of enough to have Armando Benitez come out of a bullpen and F up an incredibly pitch game against the Indians that he's never remembered for. So Mussina was a pretty good October pitcher, and so.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so they're both Hall of Famers to me, but then there's this tug of war and all this other nonsense that goes on. Go ahead and make your case for them or anybody else or against anybody else that you wish to in this campaign, Just.
Well, I think you make a really good point there, which is that one of the reasons that I'm particularly interested in Mussina's candidacy is that he is the last significant Oriole who's going to be going in for a while, right? I mean, we don't have anybody on the horizon. Like you said, there's nobody who's played with the Orioles since Mike Mussina, who is going to be a Hall of Famer. I mean, guys who played extensive periods with the Orioles. Obviously, like you said, you had the Thomeys and Vlad Guerreros and guys who had brief stops with the Orioles. But in terms of guys who actually you think of as Orioles, Mike Mussina is going to be the last guy for a long, long time, most likely. So that's why I'm really interested in his candidacy, and I've been following.
And by the way, his hat will have an N and a Y on it, right? I mean, his hat's not going to have a bird on it.
I don't think so. I don't think if you look at his numbers, everything, he's better with the Orioles. He pitched more games. He won more games, better ERA, more strikeouts. Every All-Star game appearance he had was with the Orioles. I think, historically speaking, it would be odd to me if they did choose the Yankees. I think my guess is it's either going to be the Orioles or it's going to be a blank hat the way Greg Maddux had it. There have been a few players who've gone in who had substantial careers with more than one team who have chosen that route. I'll be surprised if it is the Yankees hat, but you never know with these things. But in any case, Mussina is, to me, the numbers are pretty clear that he is a Hall of Famer. I think he's been hurt by a few things, one of which is he didn't get to 300 wins, and he was, went up against the ballot against several guys who did. His ERA is a bit high for a Hall of Famer, but again, you have to look at the context of when and where he was pitching. Pitching in the height of the
every pitch he ever threw was in the American League East. Every pitch he ever threw, save for a couple of turd years here when Angelos wrecked the franchise at the turn of the century, were in high leverage, big ball games, big stadiums, big consequences. Right. Number one, number two starter most of his career, paid as such. Always, pitched on opening day and faced the other team's best. You go on and on and on about all those things, and I'm sure that the nerds have. But, part of this Hall of Fame thing is if you watch baseball, there's an eyeball test part of it. There just is, If you paid attention to Jim Rice, you knew he was a Hall of Famer the whole time. You're just sitting around saying, when are these racists going to get off it? You know what I mean? When are the people in Boston going to get off it and let him in? And it took forever for a guy who was, I watched him play. He's a Hall of Famer, Period.
Yeah, like I said, and then, so I think he comes on the ballot the first time. He's going up against Pedro Martinez and Randy Johnson and Greg Maddux and John Smoltz and Tom Glavine. He's going up against some big name starting pitchers, and that hurt him the first few years. And Roger Clemens has been on the ballot the whole time too. That's a different story, obviously, but all those guys on the ballot. So it hurt him the first few years, but now that I think all those names have been cleared off, he's emerged as, you know, the best starting pitcher, he or Schilling, the last few years, and now Halladay on this year. So, but anyway, I think that people have come to realize that, you know, even though you know, you can't put him on the level of a Maddux or a Johnson, but he's the next tier down from that, and that's still a Hall of Famer in my book.
It's fascinating. Like, you say Clemens, and I laugh, and we say Bonds, and we laugh, and we say Pete Rose, and we chuckle, right? And we say Marvin Miller, and that's like, you're not even allowed to say that, right? And then we say other things like, you know, the guys on the edge of all of this, the Pettits and Pudge Rodriguez, and guys that it's not in hushed tones anymore. Palmeiro would be another guy that checks every box that, you know, we chuckle at that. I don't know what point you get off of the bad guy list, the Giambi list, and you go and A-Rod. Let's get him involved in this before, you know, that's not too far away as well. All of this is coming down the line, and what makes you nicer, cleaner, freshened up, you know, more tidy? I don't know. I mean, I've always felt like Fred McGriff always skated on the other side of using PEDs and always had a different set of rules applied to him. Cal Ripken's another guy that never had any steroid allegations, but somehow Brady Anderson was his best friend and never had it near him, so it never affected him. Anybody that was on or near or around Mitchell Report or any allegations of Jose Canseco or, you know, any of that, Sammy Sosa, McGuire, the obvious places, Balco, Bonds, you know, any of the sniffs to that, it has become just flavor of the month as to whether we're going to canonize that guy or give them the scarlet letter of the Lords of Cooperstown, you know?
Well, you know, as I said earlier, it's become a very complicated question. I mean, I think when Bonds and Clemens first came on the ballot, they got something in the neighborhood of, you know, somewhere around 25 to 30%, I think it was, the first time they were on the ballot. And so it's like, oh, wow, they really didn't do well at all. They've gradually been going up and up and up, and I think they're over 50% now, and they'll probably be over 50% this year. You know, but they're not going to get in by the writers. I just don't think there's going to be enough time left for them to get in. So at some point, they're going to be examined by these veterans committees, and that's going to be really interesting. It's going to be really interesting to see if you ever get veterans committees who are willing to vote for them, because right now, clearly, the writers aren't. At least 75% of them aren't. And that's really going to mean, if those guys ever get in, that suddenly I think changes the calculus for everybody else, right? I mean, once those two are in, you kind of have to start saying, well, it's foolish to keep Sammy Sosa out, or it's foolish to keep Mark McGuire out. I think people do make exceptions for Manny Ramirez and Rafael Palmeiro because these guys actually tested positive, which the other guys never did. So I think some people make a distinction between those things. It's a really complicated thing, and I wish it didn't exist. I wish we could just purely judge these guys and what they accomplished on the field, but there's certainly, you know, there's just enough people who don't see it that way that they're going to be kept out, and we're going to have at some point have a reckoning and decide what we're going to do with them.
We start to say lowering the bar when Harold Baines gets in, right? And then we say, where is the bar on steroids or on ethics or integrity or even cheating in the case of Pete Rose? We're going to let the guy in, or just being a jackass like Pete Rose or like, you know, Kurt Schilling, or guys that have rubbed people, right. Barry Bonds, you know, who just rubbed everybody the wrong way, as opposed to Roy Halladay and Mariano Rivera, who rubbed everybody the right way, and Edgar Martinez, right, who rubbed most people the right way, and Mussina rubbed most smart people like me the right way, but a lot of people the wrong way, you know, with the Stanford education and whatnot. Schilling pisses everybody off at one point or another. So, you know, and somehow Omar Vizquel, who, you know, he's one of my people, and I liked Omar, and Omar was always kind to me and all that, but Omar Vizquel was not a Hall of Fame player to me. And Fred McGriff would be a Hall of Fame player to me. You know, and I laugh at, like, Scott Rowland and some of the other guys. I mean, Jeff Kent, I don't laugh at that, and maybe Gary Sheffield I think about. And, you know, I look at some of these other names, but it is amazing popularity and being a nice guy. And obviously, posthumously, Roy Halladay, who was always great to me as well, and apparently a great human being, much like Tony Gwynn, that being nice matters. I mean, if I had a ballot, I guess human nature part of that at 50 years of age, right?
Yeah, I think it does. Although honestly, I'm not sure. I think maybe that aspect gets overrated a bit. I mean, there are certainly guys who weren't very media friendly who got in easily. Steve Carlton, you know, a guy who didn't talk to the press for the last 10 years of his career or whatever, longer. You know, got in easily. Eddie Murray was no press favorite. He got in easily.
Reggie Jackson.
Reggie Jackson, exactly. Yeah, these guys who really nobody particularly liked. Or at least a lot of writers didn't particularly like, got in, you know, easily because they had the numbers. I think where that comes into play probably is the more borderline guys, like a Jim Rice or, you know, like Omar Vizquel, probably, like you said, probably is getting the benefit he would be because he is a likable guy. When numbers really aren't there to make him a Hall of Famer, remember he played for a long time, everyone liked him. He was always a good clubhouse guy. That certainly helps. I mean, if he had a reputation for being a jerk, I don't think he'd be getting the support he's getting right now.
Hey, and by the way, I think A-Rod's such a good broadcaster, it's going to help his Hall of Fame candidacy for people that wouldn't have voted for him. You know what I mean? Like, he's repairing his everything about himself by being the best baseball guy I've ever seen, quite frankly, on many nights, right?
Well, he certainly, I mean, he's repaired his reputation in a way that these other steroid guys never have, right? I mean, I don't think any of them have ever, Bonds and Clemens and McGuire. I mean, McGuire has tried a bit, I think, with the coaching thing, but none of them have really been able to change the story much the way A-Rod has. I still think it's going to be really tough for him just because, he was punished for it, right? I mean, he was actually suspended for an entire season, right? And then he also, he admitted to it another, time earlier in his career. I think that's going to be tough on him because there's more tangible evidence than there is with Bonds and Clemens, who I think we all know what happened with Bonds and Clemens, but it's still, it's never been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, maybe the way it has with A-Rod. And I think the younger voters, I think what you're seeing is as new voters come in and old voters go out, you're seeing more sympathy towards these so-called PED guys, and that's certainly going to help A-Rod as well. I think he's going to get more votes initially than probably Bonds and Clemens did. It's still 75% is going to be a tough hurdle to overcome, though, I think.
He is Justin McGuire. He does baseball and baseball podcast and book podcast. You can find him out at J. McGuire MLB. And, of course, a suffering Orioles fan like us, just waiting for the tickets to go on sale for the games that we're not going to be going to.
Right.
Anything you want to say? It's been a little while. They got a manager since the last time we talked, and obviously they're going to have their fan fest here. There's not much to brag on, and
right. Well,
it feels like they're a little turtled up to some degree.
I mean, and I know, everybody listening to this knows, 2019 is going to be hard. 2020 is going to be hard. I will say this, though. I am very excited. I'm very optimistic about the decisions that they've made this offseason. I think they're going with the right kinds of guys. I mean, Mike Elias, Sig Mejdal, Brandon Hyde all seem like the kind of resumes that you want for this kind of a rebuild. Elias is very well respected around the game. Mejdal, same thing. These are guys who've gone through a rebuild. They understand what it takes. They understand that there's going to be years of losing that you just can't worry too much about while you're building up a farm system. They all have, Brandon Hyde as well, they have a lot of player development experience. And that's what this team needs, right? They need guys who understand how to build a farm system. They need to understand how to work the international market, which they do. And they brought in a new international scouting director who has a ton of experience. I'm excited about the guys they've brought into place, and I'm interested to see what happens in 3, 4, or 5 years, because we know that the next few years are going to be bad again. And as a fan, you just kind of have to suck it up and say, yeah, they're going to probably lose 115 games again in 2019, or at least 110, whatever it ends up being. It's going to be a lot, and you have to kind of be optimistic that these guys are doing the right thing, and that you're going to see the results of that in a few years, the way you did with the Astros, where Elias comes from, or the Cubs, where Brandon Hyde comes from. So I think for the first time in a long time, I think fans should feel good about the decisions that the office is making, the ownership is making.
Well, I'll tell you what, the one decision that I am very happy that they've made is on the night of my mom's 100th birthday. The great William Joel will be playing Oriole Park at Camden Yards amidst fireworks and magic and a bottle of red and a bottle of white, whatever kind of mood you're in tonight. So I'm excited about that. So there will be that. There will be one little victory that night, July 26th. So circle that one. I'm guessing the Orioles will be, 27-51 by then or something like that. But God willing, we'll get there and get to the other side of all this madness. Stay close, man. I'll try to call you a couple times this year, and I don't know, if nothing else, we'll drink craft beer together, right?
Yeah, like I said, and the one piece of advice I would have for Orioles fans is pay attention to the farm system. Pay attention to the things that are going on below the major league level, because that's really the future of the Orioles. Not anything that happens on this field in 2019 is probably not going to have much of an impact on the long term. So pay attention to what's going on elsewhere.
Appreciate you as always. We'll check in again soon. It'll be baseball season, but always good to catch up with baseball historian Justin McGuire. You can find him at JMcGuire MLB, out on Twitter, and a lifer Oriole fan suffering along with the rest of us. Got my Clemente hat on today. I'm feeling good. You can find me out on the BuyAToyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on our Facebook and our YouTube, WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.